What is up, everybody, and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to be discussing the news that we were given this morning that the Detroit Lions will have no fans for their first two home games this season. Now, we have a couple of updates on Detroit Lions training camp, a couple of more updates on what happened, a few more takeaways from what happened today in training camp. So the first one is this. Talked about Jeffrey Okudah had an interception today. Apparently it was on a free play. Matthew Stafford said after practice that it was a free play that he had that interception. So someone must have jumped off sides or something like that. But hey, we'll take an interception on Marvin Jones. You know, Marvin Jones, maybe he didn't necessarily know that. Maybe he did. I'm not sure. Either way, it was an interception by Jeffrey Okudah, and that's still a good sign that he's in the right position. But someone else had an interception today, and that came from Amani, which was not on a free play. Look, Amani, man, I'm telling you, this guy keeps playing like this. I got no problems with him starting at all. I love the depth that we have. Someone put in my comments on my last video, like, I'm getting worried about depth. Don't be. This is why we did this, okay? We built depth at positions. At every positions, we have built depth where it's necessary. And you can see that the cornerback, the quarterback, the running back, you see it across the board, the wide receiver. And at the cornerback spot, Amani had an interception on a comeback route to Kenny Golladay that he jumped. Oh, snap, the cornerbacks are coming alive, baby. You see the two cornerbacks with big interceptions there. That is awesome. Speaking of Danny Shelton, like we talked about in our last video, he did pretty well. He won a couple of one-on-ones with guys like Joe Dahl and Frank Ragnow, so that's great in the interior there. Danny Shelton eating, that's what we need to see. And then John Penisini, the legend himself, John Penisini had a good day, as well as Logan Stenberg and a few of those inside battles. So I just want to touch on that, man. Amani, hold up. Amani's the guy with the pick today. Jeff Okudah did have a pick, but it may have been on a free play. Either way, we'll take it. Now, I did tell you guys in my last video yesterday, hey, look, Matthew Stafford at some point is going to have a down day. Wouldn't say he had a down day, but it was a few interceptions. That's good for our defense. We need to see that. Every NFL team apparently is looking at different ways of doing this. Some teams are saying they're going to have a percentage. Some teams are going to say they're not going to have fans at all. We have no idea, and Detroit Lions only said their first two home games. So after that, they're going to reevaluate. They're going to make some more decisions and see, whether or not they're going to allow fans, a percentage of fans. So at this point, it's kind of weird. Now, I do want to bring this up as well. I know some people were probably thinking of this initially, like, okay, hold up. Well, is that an unfair advantage for the salary cap? I think Law Nation brought this up on Fan and Fan Network. You guys got to go check out Fan and Fan Network, but he basically said that with the NFL, they would do a lot of revenue sharing for their salary cap. So if one team is going to have fans and they make more money for their salary, it's going to go across all teams. It's not like one team's going to get an unfair advantage. That's how the NFL is set up. That's a great point by him. So I thought I would just bring that up first. Now, what kind of impact could this have on the Detroit Lions? Well, Lions' first two home games this season are against the Chicago Bears week 1 and the New Orleans Saints. Two big games. Now, the Saints obviously is not a division game, but it is a huge game this season. It's an NFC opponent that is one of the best teams on the Lions schedule. I think it's arguably the most complete team that the Lions will play this season. We know every time these two teams match up, Drew Brees against Matthew Stafford, we're in for a treat. I mean, heck, we had a game that was literally 45-10 at one point that ended up being a one-score game in the fourth quarter. How does that happen? I don't know. It's just the Saints versus the Lions, some of the most entertaining games. And when you have talent like Drew Brees coming into town, you got Michael Thomas coming into town, fans are going to come out to see it. You're going to get your bandwagon Saints fans, but you're going to get some real Saints fans as well. It's going to be a treat, right? Those are always a good game. However, week 1, you're opening the year this year against a divisional opponent. That doesn't happen super often, and this is going to be huge. This is going to be a tone setter and a must-win year for Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. This game is going to be the game that people are going to have their eyes on because it's like, hey, we can make a statement in week 1 against the Chicago Bears. No one knows how good the Bears are going to be, right? They just won the division. All of a sudden last year, they just kind of fell off. No one knows how good the Bears are going to be. They seem kind of like this. We don't know who their quarterback's going to be week 1. But it is a divisional game that's going to have tons of attention. Like every team is health and safety first, as they should, okay? They're trying to make sure everybody is healthy. And I know some people have their own takes on, what's the right decision, what the NFL should do, what college football should do. I don't want to get into that because I'm not trying to get into, that kind of controversial stuff, all right? I'm not a doctor. I don't want to get into any of that. So week 1's going to be rocking. Last year, I went to Detroit Lions home opener against the LA Chargers. And let me just say, it was rocking in there. And Detroit Lions were able to come away with a 13-10 win. It wasn't pretty, but it was a win. And it was a heck of a way for the Detroit Lions to get in the win column at home. I remember, I have a little clip on Instagram. I was like, oh my gosh, everybody's hyped. It was a really cool environment. And even though the Lions didn't give you a lot of reasons to be excited early, they came up with some big plays in the end that were super loud. And everybody was kind of just losing their mind. It was a great way. And I'm sure the Kansas City Chiefs game was extremely loud as well. What kind of impact will this have? Well, for now, it's just the first two games, okay? We don't know what the future of the season is going to look like. We don't know how long this is going to last, but for the first two games, we know that the Lions will not be allowing fans in the stadium as of now. But we also need to understand, do fans in the stadium actually have an impact? The Lions will probably do if they're not going to have fans there, right? Is it going to be fake sound, right? Or is it just going to be completely silent? I'm pretty sure there's going to be fake sound. We've seen it with the NBA. We've seen it with some other teams. Actually, the Packers put out a video of their fake artificial sound of crowd noise. It sounds kind of weird, I'm not going to lie. It sounds kind of hard. It kind of hurts your ears a little bit, but that just could be the audio that we're getting it from whatever they're recording on. Either way, it's fake crowd noise, and that's probably what's going to be happening with the Detroit Lions. Now, I don't know exactly how they do that, right? Because it doesn't seem like after watching the NBA with their fake crowd noise, it's like, it doesn't seem with momentum it gets any louder. It seems pretty much the same. They just go through chants, things like that. So there is going to be crowd noise. I'm pretty much going to bet on that, and it will be probably artificial for the first couple of weeks. So at least for us as the viewer, it won't seem too weird because there will be some noise in the background. And for the players, they'll be able to hear something, they just won't see anything. We know the NBA is doing like a whole digital thing, but they're also in a bubble. We can't do that at Ford Field unless you put like stuffed animals in the seats or something. That would be funny. I'm down for that. If you guys want to put like inflatable people or stuffed animals there, that's awesome. I would rock with that. Always that debate on whether or not fans even have an impact on games. And us as fans, we want to say, yeah, we do. I mean, shoot, we're there, we're making noise. There's been certain examples of certain teams that have had louder crowds than others that have seemingly had bigger impacts, and it's tougher to play in this stadium. And I think the best one that comes to mind is the 12th man, right? The Seattle Seahawks, especially with the Legion of Boom and when they were on top of the NFL, right? When they had a Super Bowl, when they were that team, okay, that team with the 12th man, that team was loud, okay? That was like as loud as you could get in the NFL. They were breaking records. I believe they're still in the Guinness Book of World Records for having the loudest crowd. They reached 137.6 decibels in one of their games back in 2013, right? This is when Seattle was doing their thing. They reached 137.6 decibels at home, which passed the Kansas City Chiefs for the loudest crowd, and it's also louder than a fighter jet that is launching. That's how loud that was. I know it doesn't seem realistic, but that's literally how loud they were. I'm going to show a clip for you guys of how loud that crowd actually was. Yeah, that's pretty loud. Okay, that's just a few examples. The quality isn't the best, but I don't know who was recording this. We've heard from a couple of players, we've heard some from referees, and we've heard from some guys that study this, that do the science and all this, that kind of dive into whether or not this impacts anything. And we also know the stats to back it up on whether or not a home team is winning more of their games. In the 90s, home teams won about 60% of their games, which could either mean that the home teams were just a better team, they were winning football games, or it could mean that the crowd was a lot louder. You know, the Detroit Lions had that incident, I would say, a while back, where apparently the Lions crowd was being too loud, and the referees had to tell them to quiet down, or since then that has been changed, and that's not the case anymore. Okay, you can't get in trouble for being too loud, at least we haven't seen that yet, but the Lions got in trouble for that. So the Lions apparently were making some impact on that game, because they were saying that the offense couldn't hear, because they couldn't do that. Now with all the technology, they can hear through the helmets, at least for a certain amount of time, then the play starts and they can't. But we know with technology it's a little bit easier now, but at that time, there was like, hey, the crowd, you're too loud. They can't hear anything on offense, which, by the way, is bogus. Are you serious? You're going to tell us to be quiet? Okay, Lions fans, I know there's going to be a penalty, so it's kind of hard. Like, you want to get louder, but you don't at the same time. But that just shows, hey, the crowd at least had some impact back then.
If the noise persists, the defense will be charged with a timeout.
Now, does it have the same impact now with the new technology? That is the real question. Well, let's look at another Lions example. Let's go back to 2011, where the Detroit Lions were playing Monday Night Football. Now, 2011 was a hot start. The Lions got off to a 5-0 start this season. They went 10-6 on the season. They were back in the playoffs for the first time in a long time. It was the first time in 9 years they were on Monday Night Football. Think about that. The first time in 9 years, and the crowd came excited. The Lions won this game 24-13 over divisional rival Chicago Bears. This is a big game. It's prime time, right? You're finally here. The Lions are off to a hot start of the season. You're playing a divisional opponent, and you win the game. You knew it was going to be loud. It was so loud that after the game, Jim Schwartz gave the game ball to the Lions fans. That's how loud it was. We also have a clip from that. But that stadium was packed, and you know that Lions fans are being, especially when you're indoors, right? That thing can get loud. I know we don't maybe have, maybe some of the bigger turnouts, or maybe we don't have the biggest stadium, but it gets loud in there. We got to hear from an offensive tackle, an NFL offensive tackle, who said this. He said, if I can't hear when it gets loud in certain stadiums, if I can't hear very well, I have to try to peek at the football to see the snap. Because I don't know when the snap is, you can't hear the snap count. It can get that loud according to this tackle. And I can get it. You got the helmets on, you got all the pads on. It could be really hard. You got defense talking. The crowd is just incredibly loud. You probably got music playing in the stadium. It is like extremely loud on the field. And an offensive tackle, if he can't hear that cadence very well, he doesn't know when the snap's coming. He's kind of got to peek at the ball to make sure that he doesn't leave early or doesn't leave too late. So he's peeking at that, trying to see it. it, and that takes his eye off the defender. He says that takes his eye off of the defensive lineman, and you just got to hope that you could see that snap, get back in your stance before the defensive lineman is able to make a move on you, because you're going to be behind. So it does have an impact apparently on offensive tackles. That's what he said. He said home crowds can put pressure on a struggling offense to make a play. This is another thing that we've seen examples of. When an offense, for a home team, right, this is your team's crowd. If an offense is doing bad, we've heard the boos, right? We've heard the boos from fans. We've heard the boo. We've heard that when they haven't played well. And that does have an impact because it can put pressure on offenses, apparently, according to some players. It puts pressure on that offense to make a play. With the Kelvin, it puts a lot of pressure on the offense, and then when they make a bad play, they're booing, and all of a sudden, it loses confidence for the offense instead of the other way around, because it's like, what the heck is going on here? And I never am for that. I'm never for booing for your own team, but we know that that has an impact as well, and obviously, you just don't want to play that bad in the first place. Can the crowd affect officials? And I think this is something that we're seeing with the NBA as well, right? And I think this team made a good point on this. We've talked about it. It makes a good point with the NBA, right? The NBA is in this bubble. They have this fake crowd. It's different to just have noise and actually have people sitting there yelling at you as a referee. If you guys, I'm sure some of you guys that play sports, you know that the crowd can have an impact. Some people are better at zoning it out than others. But for the referees, even though a referee will say, and they've said before, that it doesn't make an impact on anything, there has been some numbers to back up that they can be a little bit biased towards the home team if they know they're going to get some backlash without even thinking of it. Now, it's hard to really back up stats to this because, it's kind of just something that you really can't back up with stats. But there is that thought, according to some people that study this, that study the science of the crowd noise and, everything like that, referees sometimes can tend to be a little bit biased because they don't want that backlash from the crowd if they're making a call that necessarily the team doesn't like. And even if they're not thinking about doing that, sometimes it come out that way. But when you're in a bubble, right, there's no one like that. And I think that takes away from the home court advantage. And I think we've seen that with 2 8 seeds beating the 1 seed in the first game. Now that could be the 1 seed just didn't come to play, but let's be honest, who thought the Magic were going to beat the Bucks? And I know the Bucks bound back, but I think a lot of that no home court advantage, that can have a big impact on the referees, the players. I think, there's really hard to find statistical evidence to back up what kind of effect fans can have. And who knows if the Lions will have that kind of effect. But we know as fans, and again, this was something that was proven, is that you can get about 8 people together, and if they start a wave, you can get about 60,000 people to be doing that just a few minutes later, because that's how fast things can spiral in a stadium. Things can get crazy really, really fast, and that's the impact that fans play. And the Seahawks have been well known for causing a lot of false starts. In that Lions 2011 Monday Night Football game, they forced 9 false starts. All right, now some of that is just offensive error. Another part of it is the crowd noise. 9 false starts in one game. That's why the game ball was given to the fans, because crowd noise does play a factor, and I think it does a little bit. Maybe not the biggest factor, right, on who's going to win and who's going to lose, but it does have a little bit of a factor on the game. And if it can mess up a defense, your opponent at all, you'll take that advantage every single day. And I promise you, I believe that we had an advantage in that Chargers game. We were loud. We forced a couple of false starts. I know it. I know there were a couple of fan false starts. It got loud in there in that opening game. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. It's just my thoughts. Yes, I do believe there will be artificial noise, but is it going to be a big loss for the Lions? Some offensive players says it could help them, which it kind of seems like, and some defense players says they ride off that energy. So we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.